Welcome to the Less Invasive Podcast, a podcast covering minimally invasive surgery and enabling technologies for the operating room and radiology environment. I'm your host, Lucien Blondel, co-founder and CTO of Quantum Surgical, a startup commercializing the Ep7 robot for percutaneous tumor ablation. I bring to the table 20 years of experience in imaging and robotics for orthopedics, cranial neurosurgery, spine surgery, interventional radiology, and interventional oncology. Today, I'm very grateful to have Todd Usen on the show. So Todd is the CEO of a medtech startup called Activ Surgical that commercializes a digital platform for minimally invasive surgery. And Todd is also a seasoned medtech executive with over 25 plus years of experience in this industry and a proven track record at Olympus, where I was the president of medical systems, at Smith & Nephew, where he was president of orthopedics, and also at Boston Scientific, where he held various sales management roles in the GI and neurovascular space. Todd, thank you very much for making time for me in your busy schedule. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Lucien. Thanks so much for having me.
Cool. So I want to start this episode by understanding a little bit more the mission and the vision of Activ Surgical. But first, a question about yourself. So you spent your whole career in the medtech industry, and you could have left the space and drive companies in other industries. What's your why? Why do you stay in medtech?
Well, I've always been a big believer in the space since I was young. Fortunately or unfortunately, I grew up in a world where my mother had multiple sclerosis. So she dealt with MS for years. And the last about 12 years of her life, she was completely bedridden. And
Okay.
it was somewhat difficult to see because she was such a strong, powerful person. Her mind was perfect, but her body just started failing a little. So I always had that interest in understanding, how do you give back? I wasn't really in that role of becoming a doctor. I was going to look at other opportunities, and then while I was in college in the business school, I was recruited into medical right away. And I never realized how lucky I was because I realized how hard it is to get into. But
Hmm.
I've never looked back. And I always felt that to me, it was always about a technology more than anything else, not just being at a big company or a big name. It was about a technology that truly makes a difference. So I've always made sure there was a legitimate problem and that a company that I was working on or the technology that I have, there's a solution versus so many technologies out there are just amazing solutions all looking for a problem. And
Hmm.
so my why is because my mother had MS and there's never been a cure. It's
Okay.
always looking for we know the problem and what's a solution. So and that's the world that I've been through in my formative years at Boston Scientific, Smith and Nephew, and Olympus. Prior to Activ Surgical, there's always been technology that you believe in that actually can solve a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I love that mindset of starting with the problem and not starting with the great technology because I mean, that's you can have a great product with not a so sophisticated technology as long as it answers the needs of the physicians for
Sure.
improving patient outcomes. You don't need a very complex machine. So, uh, the technology at Activ Surgical. What's the mission? What's the mission of Activ Surgical, and what's the vision behind this company?
Well, the mission is truly to, and it sounds like a bumper sticker to a point, but it's truly to democratize surgical care in the operating room. And what I mean by that is um, every patient, and every patient should have the confidence that their surgeon, no matter where they are in the world, has the same information that they can perform an effective surgery and get an effective outcome. And Activ Surgical is one that really is focusing on making sure that we provide the insights and the information live in real time surgery so physicians all have the same information. To back up that mission a little, Lucien, I look at many other fields and many other things that we deal with every day in life. And I think about, oftentimes because our foundational technology was autonomous robotics. Activ
Mhm.
Surgical in 2017 completed the world's first fully autonomous robotic procedure of soft tissue. Now, we're not building a robot, but I look into the autonomous car world. And I realize that to get from a traditional car to an autonomous car, we've had rear view cameras, we've had side view mirrors, we've had seats that vibrate. We have all this information that a new driver that's been driving for one day has the same information that I do that's been driving for 30 plus years.
Hmm.
Now, my intuition hopefully is better. And so hopefully I'm a better driver, but that information is available. But a surgeon that's been practicing for 1 day, 1 year, 5 years, doesn't have the same information or knowledge that a surgeon that's been practicing for 30 to 40 years or 20 years or 15 years. And that's not necessarily right. So Active Surgical, in a sense, is providing that rear view camera or that side view mirror with a mark on it or vibrating seats with lane assist, to surgeons, no matter where they're practicing, whether they do 5 procedures a year or whether they do 500 procedures a year. We're providing insights on your surgical screen, on your image, on your monitor, while you're doing laparoscopic or robotic procedures that a physician can't see without the active technology.
All right, so I understand the mission is very clear and the vision also. So let's talk about the product. So ActivSight, that's the name of the product. How
Yes.
does it look like? What it is?
The very first product, ActivSight, is what's called an imaging module. It's a small device that fits seamlessly between a existing laparoscopic camera
Hmm.
and a laparoscopic scope. Now, any company, so my past background being with Olympus, as the president of Olympus and even at Smith and Nephew, I understand scope and camera technology because both those
Yep.
companies were global leaders in those spaces in their specific markets that they competed in. Carl Storch, Stryker, what have you. So those are cameras that attach to a scope and go do a laparoscopic procedure. Every hospital in the world has laparoscopic scopes and cameras. We don't want to be selling a lot of capital. We have a device that fits and FDA cleared, fits seamlessly between existing scopes and existing cameras. And you continue to utilize your Stryker system, your Storch system, your Olympus system, and take advantage of all of those benefits for everything that you purchase those systems for. But when you want to visualize blood flow or key critical structures without the use of any dyes or in real time information that's not visible any other way, you press a small button on the image module that attaches between the scope and the camera, and you'll see things right on your monitor, physician, in real time, information that you can't have any other way. There's no way to see some of these critical structures. There's no way to see some of this blood flow in real time without the use of any dyes. And that's what Active is doing. We're just trying to provide real time, intelligent information for physicians to continue to make good decisions. And Lucian, the reason why, to me, remember when I started saying, what's the problem? There has to be a real problem.
Yep.
The third leading cause of death in the world are preventable medical errors.
Okay.
26% of those preventable medical errors are preventable surgical errors. This means patients that went to the operating room table without a terminal disease. They were getting their gallbladders removed. They were getting a colorectal procedure, an esophagus procedure, all serious procedures, but none that a patient should be dying from.
Hmm.
And patients are coming back and being readmitted because of things that are situational awareness, things that aren't visible to the naked eye. It's not due to lack of skill of the physician. It's due to lack of information, or there's certain things you can't see in real time that we want to make sure we provide that surrounding. Just like I said, no matter how much you drive in life, and we said we would never use our rear view cameras because I know how to turn around and turn my head and put my arm over the seat and look behind me. I still could never see the curb or the street behind me. But now the camera on the back of my car is seeing all the way down to the street level. It's just providing information that no matter how I drive, there's no way I could ever have. And that's what we're trying to do. And we are doing, and we're performing that well to make sure physicians can identify things. We want to reduce those readmissions, and we want to reduce the third leading cause of death, those preventable surgical errors. And that's really where Active Surgical, this technology, works and comes in handy.
Okay, I mean that's a great analogy with the car. Everybody can relate to that, and myself also. I was trained on the rear view mirror, but right now with the camera and stuff, it's much more easy. It's much and you can see people and prevent from hitting on someone just basically that you would not have seen. So that's great. So the ActivSight imaging module, how big is it? Is it a reprocessed? Is it a sterilizable component? How does it work? It's just
Yes,
small square stuff.
it's a completely disinfectable, unsterilizable
Okay.
technology that fits. It's a little taller than a camera system, but
Okay.
it's thinner than the camera itself, and it fits right between um, the camera. It's smaller than your phone
Okay.
device that attaches between a scope and a camera, and it's button controls right on top that the surgeon with one hand can use her thumb to control the visualization that you're trying to see, whether it's our overlay, our contrast, or even the visualization of dyes, which we can also visualize dyes without asking the hospital to bring in a $200,000 or $150,000 to $200,000 piece of capital equipment to visualize other dyes that they're injecting as well. So we really tried to make this system very seamless and easy to use for our hospitals.
And so I'm a surgeon, I operate, I want to have this insight, I press the button. Is this the information is on the same screen where you get your laparoscopic view, or is it a second screen with the additional information? How does it work?
Great question. And it's exactly the same screen. So we
Okay.
have different choices. So you're looking at your traditional laparoscopic or endoscopic view on the screen. And we call that red, green, blue, your RGB visual that you get from any scope system. When you press the Activ button, you have choices. You can see an overlay view, which is a perfusion overlay that lays right on top of your laparoscopic view. You can see a contrast view by just pressing the buttons. And these views are just showing you where the blood flow or key critical structures are appearing. And then there's even, to make it simpler, the opportunity for picture-in-picture. So you can always keep your laparoscopic view. We want to make it so we've spoken to many physicians over the years that started learning ultrasound or how to read an MRI. Oftentimes said, I didn't know where I was. And if I had something that would have grounded me, my original view, but it doesn't work that way. It's not possible in the ultrasound or an MRI. But in this technology, instead of just putting a foreign picture on the screen with multiple colors, we want to make sure that we're letting the physician always know so they can be grounded. So you can always go back and forth between your traditional laparoscopic view, your contrast or overlay, and you can actually at the same time have a picture-in-picture and see both views and make whichever one you'd like to be larger or smaller.
Okay, I understand. So pretty much because I was discussing that with in the two previous episodes with a surgeon, reconstructive pelvic surgeon, and the general surgeon. Surgeons don't want really to change their workflow, their equipment, and stuff
Not
like
at all.
that. So what I understand here is that they have this piece of equipment. Of course, they have to plug it to between the camera and the scope, but basically they operate the same as what they used to be. It's just that on the push of a button, they can have different view of the anatomy and have insight of where the blood goes and maybe some anatomical structures they could not really see
Sure.
through the blood or stuff like that in the images thanks to the active imaging module, right?
Absolutely. So the workflow, the goal was to continue to make it seamless. They're not turning on ActivSight the entire procedure. So I'll give you one quick example of a procedure. So thoracic surgeons perform esophagectomy. That means potentially maybe the patient has cancer in their esophagus and they want to remove the tumor.
Okay.
Above the tumor and below the tumor, there's probably adequate blood flow. But right where the tumor is, there's not. So what the physicians would have done in the past is they may inject this dye called ICG. And the dye goes wherever there's blood flow, active blood flow. The dye will attach itself, and then they bring in another system that visualizes dye, and the system will show fluorescent green. The system is not really visualizing the blood, it's visualizing the dye. So
Okay.
we see where there's green above the tumor and there's green below the tumor in your esophagus. So if you want to remove the tumor, you want to cut where there's still some blood flow and above it and below it, and then you want to sew it back together. And that's called an anastomosis, when you
Okay.
sew something back together. The problem with an anastomosis, any anastomosis, the number one side effect, in this case complication, is called an anastomotic leak. And 22 to 24% of esophagectomies have an anastomotic leak. The number
Wow,
one
that's
cause, Lucien, of an
that's
anastomotic
a high
leak.
rate, 20%.
Yeah, it's a very high rate. Now, in colorectal procedures, bariatric, there's also anastomotic leaks. Some can be as small as 2%, others can be 8%, 10, 12%, but they occur. And the number one cause of them is inadequate blood flow. So in the past, because you injected this dye, it's only real time once because it's dye that's in the system.
Yeah,
So
then it
until all of
disappears.
that dye dissipates, so when I sew these two sides of the esophagus back together or two sides of the colon back together, and I want to make sure there's adequate blood flow at my suture site, am I looking at the dye that I had previously injected, or am I looking at fresh dye that tells me real time? And this is not a surprise to physicians. Every doctor knows they don't get real time visualization with dyes, but it has been the gold standard. With Activ, because it's not liquid based. It's basically laser speckle technology and with sensor data, computer vision, that with the press of a button, we're showing you where there's active blood flow. If I took a bleeding esophagus and I clamped it right in the center and stopped the bleeding, and you turn on ActivSight, you'll see exactly where the blood stops. As soon as you release the clamp, you'll see the blood start to show up again. That's not available anywhere in medical today. And
Mm.
blood flow is the first principle of surgery. And the fact that there's no real way or simple way for physicians to identify blood flow in real time is one of the advantages of the ActivSight technology. And that wasn't even the number one reason why the technology was created, but that's one of the simplest ways for physicians to provide them more information. Again, you switch lanes in your car and your seat vibrates when you're not paying attention. So, or your steering wheel vibrates.
Yep.
We want to give you that information that you've never had so you can make the best decisions. And then you're not going to exit the patient until you know there's adequate blood flow in real time at that suture site. And that's one of the advantages with the anastomosis portion of Activ. That doesn't even start to go into the critical structure identification, which we can get into as well.
Okay, so I understand those two advantages, that you do not have to inject dye because you have the blood flow that is analyzed by the laser technology, and also you can turn on and turn off as long as you want this kind of technology, and always have the information when you turn on the device, and not based on what happened before. So that's that's very very interesting. So you mentioned that in some way this system is replacing conventional near infrared imaging equipment that would have been additional to the procedure otherwise.
Well, it's not necessarily the equipment, it might be the dye, because a near infrared
Okay.
scope is still very valuable. And we actually work best through near infrared scopes that can visualize that type of a technology. And the fact that we also, there are other uses for dyes outside of blood flow. You won't need dye anymore to determine perfusion data, perfusion being
Okay.
blood flow. But there are advantages of dyes to see certain sentinel and lymph nodes. Dyes can see certain critical structures early. And one of the things that Activ is doing is our second product is called Activ Insights. While we're in the case with our ActivSight image module, there's 50 million procedures globally that have a need for identification of blood flow and certain key critical structures, which we can do. But while we're in that case, we have what's called Activ Insights. And this will transform massive amounts of data that's gathered intraoperatively to help characterize tissue and other critical structures. And we're basically going to take that data, de-identified surgical video that goes up into the cloud. It's then annotated by physicians all over the world. We have some people that are annotating today, and they're identifying key critical structures, and they're identifying sentinel and lymph nodes that they can see with dye, or they're identifying a gallbladder, or excuse me, a common bile duct that you can identify with dye. So then they identify it, label it, annotate it, and then it goes into our machine learning model. So we'll be able to feed back in real time to physicians without the use of dyes for those other areas that need dyes. This is your common bile duct. Here is your ureter. Here are certain key structures that we want to identify that cost U.S. healthcare alone over $1 billion a year because of damage to certain structures that aren't visible. Some structures aren't even visible with dye that we can identify, such as the ureter. Other structures you can see with dye, and we can see them with ActivSight, but we're collecting that data. So in about 12 to 18 months, you won't need any dye at all to even inject, and you're going to be able to identify that through our AI portion. And then there's key critical structure. I mean, our science, we've gotten into robotics very quickly, Lucian, and that wasn't necessarily, even though like our foundational technology, as I shared, was autonomous robotic surgery. The number one procedure that's done in robotic surgery is called a radical prostatectomy, or a nerve-sparing prostatectomy.
Yep.
And one of the side effects of a nerve-sparing prostatectomy that every single surgeon in the world tells every single patient in the world, that during this removal of the prostate, we may clip a nerve.
Yep.
And it's called the landmark artery. And if we clip that nerve, it could lead to erectile dysfunction or loss of function for short periods of time or forever. And many patients, surprisingly, or believe it or not, and maybe it's not that surprising, are choosing for localized chemotherapy because they don't want to have that risk. And it's understandable. One of the things that Activ has been proven to do, and we're working with physicians right now, the number one robotic surgeon in the world is one of our scientific advisors. We've been able to identify this landmark artery and nerve before the physician starts to dissect or cut the prostate out. So all of a sudden, if you can see that and then make your cut, we can remove the prostate and limit the chances of nicking that nerve. And that's something with our science that originally we thought would be part of our AI. But actually the science and the continuation of the work of the team on our science and our algorithm, we're able to identify, it's called able to identify the neurovascular bundle pre-release. And that's going to make a huge difference in patient care, because now we're taking a major risk, the number one risk out of prostatectomy surgery.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, now I fully understand what is Active Surgical because I prepped the episode for sure, but the AI part, I was not grasping exactly the contour and what it was doing. So, right, and it resonates quite with some work we are doing in AI for radiology, where like we are in a liver cancer, and you can it's not surgery, it's with percutaneous procedures, but radiologists they have those images, CT, and sometimes they don't really see where is the tumor, where are some critical structures, and so they need to inject contrast agent,
Right.
and there is so much agent that you can inject because of the renal impact on the renal function, and so they have to choose between inject this product to get more insight, or
You're right.
just to say, okay, I think it's there, so I will not inject any more data, any more contrast agent. And so if you have some kind of AI that automatically identify in real time in the images where is the tumor, where is the bile duct, where is those stuff, then even in our space, which is interventional radiology, that would be very helpful. So thanks for having clarifying this topic for me. So AI is, I understand this is something you're working on, and that will be uh, um, added to the product that you have already, because it's a software, it's at the back end of the
Mhm.
digital surgery platform that you are having, and then your customer will be able to have both the advanced imaging functions as well as the contouring and anatomical structure identification thanks to the AI intelligence, right?
Yeah, and it starts with, I mean, AI in medical, and anyone that's listening to this podcast knows that people talk about AI all the time, but
Yep.
it's not as easy as we're going to have AI and tell us what to do. We have to have a confidence level of our surgeons. I mean, is a surgeon going to believe something is 97% confident when there's a 3% chance they're not when you're in the middle of surgery? Probably not, depending on the case. Other procedures, maybe yes. So AI really needs to start with computer vision, and our platform leverages AR, AI, machine learning, and sensing-based technologies to really allow surgeons to view critical physiological structures and things that can't be seen with the naked eye. But the better that the science is, the better that the data is, the better the data is, the better the outcomes will be with the leading to AI. So we're really focusing quite a bit on our science. Yes, we're collecting surgical video. Yes, we're annotating that video. Yes, we're going to be able to, with our ground truth data, continue to label key critical structure and functions, and then provide additional information to surgeons in real time. But the fact that our science is now capable of identifying certain things that in the past people didn't think the science by itself and the algorithms that we're mixing with the science would allow people to see the neurovascular bundle or allow people to see the ureter. These are major structures that it's very difficult to identify during surgery. It's just thankfully we have such talented surgeons in the world. But even with the talent, there's complications that we can hopefully prevent and eliminate or de-risk many of them and lower that risk. So yes, like I'm a big believer in AI, but I'm a bigger believer in science,
Hmm.
and the data becomes that much richer and better. And the fact that we can now help physicians, like I said, in real time, whether it's a laparoscopic, whether it's an arthroscopic, whether it's a robotic. And here's the beauty of it. This works in open procedures, whether it's breast reconstruction, whether this is going to the ICU or going to the ER with wound care or frostbite. I mean, the technology identifies blood flow. The technology identifies key critical structure. It's up to us to make the form factor fit in any of those models. Today, we're starting with the laparoscopic and robotic technology with our form factor, but we have many opportunities to continue to advance this. And thankfully, our IP allows us to do that.
All right. I mean, that's exciting. So what you say is you can plug the system either to a conventional laparoscope or even the robotic system that are commercialized today, like the Da Vinci from Intraoperative
Mhm.
Surgical.
Yeah. So today with the Da Vinci system, with a scope, to start with the scope, the question, yes, we take our image module and we attach it right to the scope and the camera that they're using for the procedure. With a robot, until we work and we're obviously have some opportunities and relationships with a handful of robotic companies, until we do some co-development and co-manufacturing, work side by side with the robot. Today, in those first urological procedures, every robotic procedure has what's called an accessory port. And in
Okay.
that access report, you basically take a scope with our
Yeah.
camera on it when the doctor, in those few minutes that a physician wants to press a button and see if they can identify the nerve. So there's always someone at the bedside in that
Yep.
access report anyway. So they move things in and out, whether it's suction or what have you. They put the camera system right into the access report. The doctor, the surgeon is controlling the robot from their console. In the Da Vinci situation, other situations, they're controlled from different mechanisms. But the early urological procedures we've done, yes, with the Da Vinci system, and the physician is going back and forth, mostly using their robot because
Mm.
that's why they're doing the procedure. But they want to use Activ for their guide. They want to see the nerve. They know where it is. They then go continue some of their procedure. They then turn it on throughout the case at different times, almost like I said with the car for lane assist. If you are confident that you are not touching the neurovascular bundle, the landmark artery, or the nerves in a patient, that's a major difference for the physician. And then it's a major difference for the patient when the procedure is over and a physician can show the patient the picture of the procedure that the nerve is intact, because the
Mm.
procedure is actually called, Lucian, and I'm a simple man, the procedure is called a nerve sparing prostatectomy. The only problem with that is it's very difficult to see the nerve. Not luckily, we can now see the nerve, and that makes a big difference and something that we're very proud of. But we want to continue to work with our physicians globally to make sure that this is making a difference for them.
Okay, so I understand that right now it's on the scope it's integrated, and the robotic side you take advantage of this fourth accessory point that they use anyway to add this information, and later on with a partnership with companies, you will be able to integrate this technology right into the robotic platform. That's very interesting. So maybe a question. What stage of commercialization are you right now with the ActivSight? Is it a limited customer release or full product
Yes.
launch? Is it US or what's the stage right now?
Yeah, so like the rest of the world, everyone was a little slowed by the pandemic, but
Yeah.
no excuses. I mean, the pandemic happened, and it's up to all of us to go out there. So we received our FDA clearance. Actually, we submitted and during the pandemic and received it right during that period as well. And then we did our initial investigational review board studies to make sure the technology was doing the things that we wanted to. We're in limited market release. We are in 13 of the largest IDNs, integrated delivery networks in the US. And the reason we chose that, and really, but focusing on one or two at a time. And the reason that we're doing that, we put seasoned medical device representatives. It'd be nice as a startup company to walk out to the field with young, hungry, new people to save a little money that way, but nobody would know Activ Surgical. So we went out and we have the people that we have in the field are managers from Intuitive, managers from Stryker, managers from Smith and Nephew, managers few from Boston Scientific, from J&J, people that have been in the operating room for thousands of procedures, and they know the landscape and they know the hospital. So they've walked into some of these large IDNs and they started doing their procedures, and physicians are ordering. And so we're in our commercial stage of the limited market release. So we're getting our first orders now with our technology, and we're very excited about that. We've completed over 200 procedures in the United States,
Okay.
non-IRB. So meaning that we're not paying for them, they're asking
Mm.
for it, the technology, to evaluate and bring it in, and we're running some great evaluations. Like I said, the reason we chose this IDN strategy, because some of these systems could have 40 hospitals in the system. Once we get into the first hospital, and it takes some time, and especially now in the medical markets when hospitals are struggling, there's a nursing shortage, there's hospitals are struggling underwater somewhat, and there's been a delay in the product meetings and the value analysis meetings. But
Yeah.
again, no excuses. So we realize that, and everyone has to deal with that, and we're dealing with that. So once we get into hospital number one, while it might take a little longer time because they're such large systems, we will have the license to hunt in a sense. We want to make sure we're on their contracts and we're on their agreements, because we're choosing hospitals that make a difference right now, that really have innovative thinkers as their surgeons to start with, that really believe in this technology. Once we're in their systems, we then can start those few representatives that we have in the field can then work the whole system. And many, like I said, are 17 hospital systems to 45 hospital systems, and that gives us a great opportunity to spread it. And then the CE mark is where CE mark, obviously everyone knows about MDRs.
Yeah.
It's taken a little longer, and we weren't going to be dissuaded from working on Europe, because we have unbelievable European advisors that we greatly believe in, that are anxiously awaiting, that we've done some procedures with already. And not we're waiting for our CE mark before we do those procedures on patients. And we have our CE mark is expected in 2022. And then we have our European advisors that are, we want to put this in their hands, start doing some procedures. And the global launch would be really second half of 2023 into 2024, after our advisors really get a chance to utilize the technology. And then we'll ramp up our US commercial activity in 2023.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, in the Europe, it's quite complex right now to get a medical device approved. With all the notified body, they have thousands of files to review, and the delays are just crazy. I mean, the average is, I think, around 18 or 20 months just to get the approval once the file is closed. So
Yes,
yeah, all right. So
it's
that's
difficult.
yeah. It's just yeah. So the downside is that companies are. I mean, the downside for me as a European is that the companies are looking to start in the US now first as the first market, and then come back to Europe. I mean, European companies. All right. So moving on to more question more about the company and yourself. I want to hear maybe a little bit. The story about, because you mentioned that all started with the autonomous surgical robotics technology that was developed in Boston, maybe.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. And the company then changed the strategy, I guess, the vision to this very relevant vision around bringing insight during minimally invasive surgery, and I understand all kind of surgeries. So a very broad market. And what's the story behind this shift of
Sure,
strategy?
sure. So in the original work that was done in 2016 at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C., with our founder, Dr. Peter Kim, who was leading that unit there, um, completed the world's first fully autonomous robotic procedure of soft tissue. The information was compared to of suturing. The autonomous robot was compared to the times of surgeons, and the data was published. And it was published in Science Magazine. Great Point Ventures Foundry. And to give you a little feel of Great Point Ventures, so it backed up the technology side of the tech side. Great Point Ventures general partner Ray Lane was the COO of Oracle for uh, 25 years or so, and his partner Ashok Krishnamurthy was a founder of Juniper Network, so believed in technology. And they approached Dr. Kim, their foundry, and said, we want to make a company out of Activ Surgical. In 2017, Activ Surgical became a company. Now, I came on at the beginning of 2019 after witnessing in December of 2018 we powered the first fully autonomous, minimally invasive robotic surgery. So it wasn't an open procedure anymore. It was minimally invasive. And I witnessed this and I was watching this, and the technology, fantastic. Um, I don't necessarily know if it was a change in strategy, but coming from the medical market that I had been in, keep in mind, I've been in both device and disposables as well as capital equipment. And my world, I've been part of robotics and Smith and Nephew with the Navio and Blue Belt
Yep.
system, and understanding the Mako system, and the time that we were working there. But I realized in general surgery and laparoscopic technology, there were three major companies: Carl Storch, Stryker, and Olympus. In orthopedic surgery and arthroscopy, there were three major companies: Smith and Nephew, Stryker, and Arthrex at the time. And you go to GI, there were three major companies: Olympus, Pentax, and Fuji. And this is the way capital goes and scopes. At the time that I was talking to Activ Surgical, there was 50 to 100 companies trying to come out with a robot. Yet obviously we knew about the few that had been FDA cleared. One was shutting its doors. Another was looking to change its name and go to a different means. Great technology, but just look, it was a struggle. I had no goal and no desire to build a robot. The goal would be to raise $2 billion to hopefully
Mm.
in 5 or 10 years have 2 or 3% on the market. When I looked at the time, robotic surgery was making up about 6 to 8% of all minimally invasive surgery, and it still is. It might be up to 9 or 10 right now. 2% of overall surgeries, which meant that 92 to 94% of all minimally invasive surgeries are done laparoscopically. So my goal was, I don't want 1 or 2% of the market with this great science that we have. And sitting with our chief technology officer, Tom Califf, who had a tremendous robotic background, had led a company through FDA of another robotic system in the past. we sat down and had a discussion of how do we get our technology to work with all systems, all minimally invasive scopes, arthroscopes, as well as robots.
Okay.
So we have the opportunity to go after 100% of the market. Doesn't mean we're going to get 100% of the market, but to limit ourselves to quite a few, I don't think would have been a good strategy. In hindsight, I'm very glad we made that decision. And Tom and team took our algorithm, took our science, took our technology, and we went from concept of the image module, the ActivSight image module, that we knew can work with laparoscopes everywhere, as well as can work side by side with robotics. And we went from concept through the FDA in 2 years. And that's unheard of. But we had great advice, great guidance, and we had a lot of medical experience on our organization. And the opportunity to, like I said, to not build a robot in the time since, there's been the FDA has changed some policy. They're asking for certain de novo. There's been some robotic companies that have closed their doors. There's some of this consolidation as we're seeing. So I think it's pretty impressive to see that at the end of the day, there's one giant company that's been selling robots in the United States. There's a few big companies that are selling robots internationally, really talented. And obviously, we just saw a major announcement with J&J and CMR, which is extremely exciting. We hope every robotic company makes it because we want to work with them all. But at the end of the day, I know there's going to be a tremendous consolidation of capital equipment. If I just look at history of the capital equipment that's been around for 50 years in medicine. So unless everything changes, I don't think building a robot was our best play. The opportunity to get this information to surgeons in whatever means possible has been what's been proven to be most successful and most exciting for our physicians.
Thank you very much, Todd. That was very insightful. I've prepped this episode and I knew this brain perfusion and fluorescence aspect of the Activ Surgical technology, but now I understand fully the potential of AI. It's not only on the visualizing the blood flow; it's much more than that. Being capable of identifying critical anatomical structure in the videos, thanks to all the annotation that is being done right now by surgeons, by physicians, and that will fed the science and algorithm and machine learning algorithm for the future. And I understand also the story behind the company and how it leverage all the technology that has been developed for a very specific purpose, automating surgical robotics and soft tissues, and transfer that technology into something that has a greater impact, I would say, because it's compatible with all laparoscope and surgical robots. So the total addressable market is just huge because it's all surgical procedures where the surgeon might make surgical errors based on inadequate identification of structures or blood flow. So I'm a better understand the technology right now. Thank you very much for having taken the time for me. How can the people reach out to Activ Surgical?
Well, I mean, if they want it, and hopefully we kept it simple with activsurgical.com. Information's on the website. We can reach out. There's contact information for those that you need to speak to. Um, Feel free, please take a look, and we're excited about it, and we're excited about the future. One thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say is, just because I said we're not building a robot, the nice thing about Activ is Activ still owns the patents on autonomous robotic surgery. So we're very proud of that, and we know it gives us an opportunity to continue to strive for a true north and help our brothers and sisters in robotics achieve things that aren't happening today, but when the world is ready for it,
Okay.
And so we
Yeah.
want to get there the right time.
At the right time. I agree with that. Autonomous robot when it will be the right time. All right. Thank you very much. Hang on. We'll chat offline a couple of minutes. And thank you all for having listening to another episode of the Less Invasive Podcast.